So what were you thinking when you decided to raise the turn here? What was your thought process exactly? Did you get it? I'm being passive aggressive, but what does passive aggressive mean when it comes to poker strategy? It refers to taking a passive action, not just procedurally checking to the razor or something like that, but a truly passive action, like checking behind instead of c-betting on 10-8-3, button versus big blind in a single raise pot. We've plugged in the B200 sizing here, by the way, but if you use a smaller sizing than a big overbet here, the same thing will apply where you'll be checking a more condensed, capped range, betting a more polarized one. That's normal. So whatever sizing you use on the flop, you will get to the turn with some kind of condensed range. You'll have more medium strength hands, less nutty draws, a bit less air, and also less value hands, right? Your range shifts towards the middle a little bit when you check back on the flop. We've given big blind a small probe sizing, which means that we've given the solver the option of leading for third pot after flop goes check check on this 6 of diamonds turn. This is a very logical sizing for big blind to use because they're going to have a merged range with a lot of thin value that's interested in generating both value and protection at the same time in spots like this. So going third pot here is pretty commonplace. You'll see a lot of people do this in real life, not because they're solvers and they're playing exactly this way, but because they just bet small with some random hand with some amount of equity. It's very common. Button has a value range for raising with. That is the point here, that when you check back the flop, although you cap yourself, and although you won't have like pocket eights anymore or pocket queens anymore, you can see these hands are gone, you are still meant to have a lot of top pair. And against third pot, top pair is a very strong hand. It should be raising at some frequency in order for you to be playing a strategy that isn't just too passive. So passive aggression is about remembering that just because you have a capped range, in absolute terms, it doesn't mean that the top part of that capped range isn't still value worthy, even for an action that seems really aggressive, like raise. You'll note that we've put in a small raise size here for button, and that's what the solver chose. I would have chosen the same sort of sizing if I was building this as a custom tree, because our raising range is sort of thin now. When you cap yourself on the flop, it doesn't really make sense to use a gigantic raise on the turn because you're just not going to have all that many combinations of straights, sets, two pair, etc. Big blind should still have some of them. They shouldn't just be using only weak hands for a small bet and bigger hands for a bigger bet, although a lot of humans do tend to play that way. So there's two elements to this. We need to find some bluff raises and we need to find some value raises. To find the bluff raises, we need to understand that we're not just going to be holding out for some behemoth of a draw, like Queen Jack of Diamonds here. Like anyone with any poker experience at all can understand that raising Queen Jack of Diamonds here is a good thing to do. But where the good players are really excelling here is that they're also understanding that when they build this flop check behind strategy, that they need to raise some smaller draws with less EV to generate fold equity and apply pressure to the button range as well. So to apply pressure to the big blind range as well. So they're going to be raising things like Jack 7, a nut shot at a very high frequency, but also just things like King 7, just a gutter, is going to be a frequent raise. So you're going to build your raising range in these spots out of draws that have low equity, medium equity, or high equity. Not very low equity, right? We're not going to be raising something like King Jack offsuit in this spot. That's a pure fold. There are some standards. But here's the thing. The drier the turn, the more these standards are going to diminish for bluffing. If we change the 6 of diamonds to the deuce of spades here, and we keep the same action sequence as before, the solver's going to pick a giant bet here, but I'm going to actually tell it has to go B33 as big blind. Then we'll see that the standards for what you need to bluff are going to go down on a texture that is drier. Because a pair draw, for example, is a better hand on a drier texture where less rivers are going to bring flushes and straights. Again, let me decrease the sizing there. On this particular card, the solver wanted to go a bit bigger, so I'm just going to tell it to raise smaller again, about 50% pot. And have a look now on this texture at what's happened to the bluff region. The value region is again going to be things like top pair or pocket aces or whatever that didn't bet the flop. But now the bluff region has expanded into the pair draw domain. So when you're taking a passive aggressive line, it's also really important to understand that pair draws are good draws. I get kind of obsessive over them because I always feel like I have to compensate for what the community doesn't do enough of. I don't know, it's like some weird feeling where I never hear anyone talk about a pair draw hand like King Jack here, and so I feel like I have to go on and on about it. But yeah, as the texture is drier, the stuff that you're drawing to doesn't need to be as nutted to apply aggression. That's a really good rule. So to sum this up, next time you check the flop, and it doesn't matter that much what sizing you were playing, you're going to have the same shape of range for arriving on the turn. You need to remember that as villain probes small and merges their range out, more and more of your top pair hands are going to be craving a bit of a bigger pot, and they can get that in a couple of different ways. They can get that by calling, then value betting river, or calling and then raising a block bet on river, but they can also get that by raising immediately on turn and then deciding whether to value bet river based on texture. And your bluffs are not limited to hands that are obvious or have really, really high equity. Like, anybody understands that Jack 9 of spades is okay to raise on this turn, although most of you probably under raise it, to be brutally honest, because that's just how humans play. But also you need to be finding the lower equity stuff as well. King Jack is one example of that. You can find some others. There's plenty of other gut shots and stuff raising here. And you can also learn about one final category of hand, which is like your hybrid raise. You look at King Deuce of Hearts here, you might think, well, why is that raising? It looks medium. The idea is you get called by worse. You make a flush in the river sometimes. You make trip deuces or kings up on the river sometimes. These are all value elements. And you also get denial because your hand is very, very low down. Your pair of deuces benefits from a fold from any hand at all that villain's probing with. So that's another category just to be aware of. We'll talk about that a bit more in future installments. This is going to be a 3-part series. While part 1 of 3 is public and you guys are all watching it, to watch part 2 and 3 of this mini-series and any other series that we release, you're going to want to go on Discord, and you need to be a golden carrot pass person. You need to have the golden carrot role, which you get by picking up the golden carrot full access pass at Carrot Corner. If you have that role, there's a channel below where I've posted this called the Golden Carrot Lounge. Content Lounge, I can't remember what I called it, but that's where you'll find these videos being dropped. We can also discuss this content in that channel as well. It is a text channel also, so let me know what you think about it here and let me know what other kinds of mini-series you'd like to see. But for now, let me get to work on parts 2 and 3 of Passive Aggressive. Don't be passive aggressive in life, it's a bad look, but you should at the poker table in some spots. See you next time.